noticing a person go out, look in the hole of the cone to see what the color was. Don't turn it up. Just look and go 4 or 5 cones to find a beanbag. When they found one, then they would open it up, get the beanbag, and go back to their spot. Is that right or wrong?
Well, it's pretty creative.
Here's where we get into ethical.
Yeah.
Okay, because let me put it in a different perspective. The light is red. The light is red, but nobody was coming. Can I go ahead and run it?
Depending on the country.
You've been sitting 5 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Do you see where I'm coming from? I teach on a regular basis right from wrong. What is right, what is wrong. We have to know these concepts. We have to know that if you touch a fire, you'll burn yourself. Somebody may still touch it, but they're going to burn themselves, right? You're not telling them the wrong information. At the same time, the right thing was you go pick up a cone, which is what I gave the directive to do. See if there's a beanbag there, put the cone back down. Is there room for creative if that's the task? Is there room for creative if that's the task? No, there's not. That's like being on an assembly line. Do you get creative with an assembly line just because you have an assembly line? You have a task to do, it's menial. But you have a task to do, right? And that task is important. Now here's where I'm going to get into what's really important about ethics. The task that you do means something for what's going to happen down the way. You may think it means nothing to you. Just because you're standing on a street corner waving for people to come across the street, you may say, well, this means nothing in life. Really? What if somebody was fixing to go commit suicide and you smiled at them coming across that street and that made all the difference and they felt like you believed in them and they decided not to kill themselves and you never knew it? But that was the message that day. Are you really meaningless? See, we've lost touch with what our role is in many ways. We've lost touch with what that job description is at times. Now, we can be creative in a lot of different situations, but when the task is the task, we can't always take that and make it what we want it to be because it will affect and impact people over here. And here's the example I'll give with that. So you say, it doesn't matter if somebody's not watching that you run the street light, but you've got a child in the back seat who is old enough to know that that's a red light and shouldn't be run, and you go ahead and run it. The child's watching. Now you go to a movie theater and you ask for 2 children's tickets and one of your children is 17. And that same child that was in there watching you run the red light now watches you buy 2 children's tickets for a child that's 17. Then you go home and the child lies to you. And you say to them, you cannot lie. Oh, right, Daddy? Right, Mommy? So what's different about what I did and what you did at the movie theater? That's where we are in society today. We have parents, we have adults of all kinds who do things and say, well, in this case, it's not bad. But in reality, it is. Because now our kids are learning something that maybe we didn't learn until we were adults. And we can change, but for them it becomes something that's normal. And that's the scary part about our society today. And that's not what you see in Finland. You see kids that do not have to have the hand-holding at 4 years of age on a scooter, you know, one of those little scooters. They go right up to the curb, they stop, they wait for the little person on the blinking light to say it's time to walk, and then they go. They know this from very early on until adulthood, how to do these things. And so this is the kind of stuff that I want you to get your heads around. With that though, I want to just tell you, today is not a bad day. This guy's having a bad day. Can you see it?
Whale or something.
This is a real picture. If you haven't seen this before, this was on the South African coast. And this guy is having a bad day.
Yeah.
He is barely up that ladder with a shark coming right at him. All you can see is the big mouth, right? Trying to get in that helicopter. But you know, you think about the perception and what we've been talking about with perception. And bad days look different for different people. Everybody has a different way of seeing a bad day. It could be that you go out in the driveway. This happened to me when I was younger. I went out in the driveway and my car was gone. Stolen. And I needed to be at school at 7:30. Gone. Is that a bad day? Well, in my books, no. It's just that I had to figure out, it's a hassle for me. Because I had insurance. It wasn't like, it's just a hassle. But did I make it a bad day? No. There was a shooting at a school one day when I was in the cafeteria and I was in the middle of the shooting. That was a bad day in my perception. I had a headache for 2 days on something that 3 people were injured, no one killed, but a .357 Magnum paralyzed 2 individuals and took a basketball athlete out of a scholarship to the university. That was a bad day. Everybody has bad days, but can we make something out of those bad days? Can we learn from those bad days? Yes. We need ethics in order not to have a lot of bad days. Because otherwise our kids, as they grow up, become more and more unmanageable and listen less to anything than what they want, right? They become very selfish and employees. So, let's go back to a little game here. You ready? I'll talk about why I do it this way in a minute, but let's do this. I want you to think about how true this statement is or how false it is. Adults and children see the world the same. How many see it as true? How many see it as false? All right, I think we're 100%. Yes? Anybody not sure? All right. Why would you say that we do not see it the same?
Just difference experiences.
Difference in what?
Experiences.
Experiences.
Adults have experienced way too many different things that kids have now.
Okay, all right.
Our brains are, the kiddos' brains are still developing. They're just, thought processes are different.
Okay.
Most children are pretty protected. They don't. That's not always true, we know. But most of our children are protected from really bad things.
I think y'all probably have a very, that would be very true of this population, right?
Here.
Yeah, here. But if I were to go into Stop 6 in Fort Worth, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
And, I remember too, and maybe you've had an experience like this, but I was teaching and coaching down in Cleveland for a while, and I had a real good friend at Arlington Heights High School here in Fort Worth. And one of those students that was on her athletic team was a fabulous athlete. She ended up winning state 3 or 4 years in a row in track, and she helped their team go to state in basketball the time she was there. And she grew up in a family, actually she grew up in a single parent home, this student did, single parent home where the parent was addicted to drugs and was not home most of the time, but sometimes when the mother did come home, she might have some guy that she brought off the street at the apartment with her. There were times where this student did not have electricity or air conditioning or heat in the apartment because the bills weren't paid, and didn't have jackets. There were 3 kids and none of them had jackets, none of them had, scarves, things that would keep them warm in the winter, or short sleeve shirts, things that would keep them cooler in the summer. They just pretty much, I almost considered it like a homeless family. did have a roof over their head, but more homeless than not. And this coach said to me, she said, you know, it's against UIL rules for me to help this family out, but you could. And because I'd always said, you know, if there's anything I can do to help families, I'm all about that. And so I went out and purchased some things for this particular family and took it to them and gave it to them to be able to have while they were in, at that time, in elementary school, middle school, and high school, these 3 kids. To this day, I still know the athlete that is now in her early 40s, I guess. And she got her PhD in education and is actually teaching in the Fort Worth area in a university setting. And so it excites me to see where kids can come from, but when we think about where they've been, that particular experience always comes back to sometimes haunt me, just thinking about the sadness, but at the same time thinking about these kids do not see the world the same way we do they?
Kids are so resilient.
They are.
Having lived in a third world country, you see kids perfectly content and happy with
Yep.
riding in the dirt or playing with a piece of trash they found on the street. They're so resilient. They don't
Yep.
take notice of the world the same way. So
Some become harder than others, depending on who they were influenced by. But all in all, we do see things differently than kids. What does that mean for us then, as far as our experiences and knowing what we know? Should that be an influence for kids? Because they don't have those same experiences.
I think we have to be careful what we pass on to them. We don't want them those children to grow so quickly where they lose that magicalness, but you don't also want children nagging to the rest of the world either.
Right.
So you have to balance it.
Exactly.
For a child,
Yep.
Yes.
you don't want them growing up thinking, my life, that's perfect, there's no suffering out there, and they'll just continue that when their life.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you have to also balance it with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not all just right here in this little cocoon. You're right. And so when we think about where we are and where kids are, we need to keep that in mind. You know, that's just something that I think needs to go forward. And you brought up an important point, and that is from an ethical perspective, it's not bringing bias into ethics. Okay? It's not about bringing bias into ethics, meaning we're not putting our beliefs onto someone. We're teaching ethical principles, values, morals that are part of a world existence, not what I believe. Okay? Now, as parents, we can. But as teachers, we need to be unbiased when it comes to, you know, everybody does have different experiences, so we have to be careful with how we do the ethics piece. School is one place where children can learn. Agree or disagree? Agree? Disagree? Not sure? Let's go again. School is one place where children can learn. Agree or disagree? Is the one place where children can learn. Is that true or false? False. Okay. If it is one place, true, right? The one place, that stumps us, because is school really the only place people learn?
No.
That's a choir there. Hey, let's have a music lesson. No, all in different voices. Yeah. No, it's not. This is just one place that kids learn, right? They're going to learn everywhere. One of the things that I always tell individuals when I go out to speak is, I learned this from a psychologist when I was in school doing my doctorate. He said, you know, we say that kids sometimes are just not motivated to do things. You ever said that before? I just don't think this kid is motivated to get this done. And he said, it's not that kids aren't motivated. They're just not motivated to get done what you want done. They're motivated. They're clearly motivated to do something. It's just not what you're wanting them to do. And so I passed that on to you because I thought that was a very clever way of looking at who our kids are. And the fact that kids are motivated, highly motivated. They're highly motivated to learn. They just may not want to learn from that particular situation or what you want them to do, but they're learning. They're learning what so-and-so over here is doing. They're watching this over here. They're making sure, you know, that their interests are being massaged. And so keep in mind that this is definitely a place that kids learn, but not the only place. And I think you already know that. Some children are not motivated to learn, the one I just talked to you about. We know that all kids are motivated to learn. It just may not be exactly what you're teaching at the time. Kids will learn in time what they want to learn, right? Something interesting enough to the child, they will want to partake of it. If they fear it, or they don't feel they'll be successful, they move away from it. So bringing in those, the belief that they can do something and that they're not going to be bullied, they're not going to be picked on, that goes back to the ethics piece that is part of today. And young children are always honest. True or false? Y'all must have some examples of this one. Yes? They're not always honest, right? Does that go back to where we are in our society today?
It does, but it's also just a way of testing your boundaries to
Yes.
see if you know.
Yeah.
if-
It's not like they don't know, right?
yeah, and they give you that look where, you believe me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to just see what you, and if you're going to push me to do something different. And I see nothing different at the university level. I have kids pushing me all the time. I don't know, Paula, did you tell them I'm an associate dean?
I don't think I did.
Okay, no, that's okay, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because I deal with student issues just like a vice principal would in a high school. You know, students come to me for all different reasons, or I pull them in for all different reasons. But one of the things that they always try to convince me of is that I'm wrong and they're right. They always try to convince me of that. And it's funny to see how before a conversation is out, how that rationalization that they really have truly ingrained in their heads starts falling apart by the end of the conversation. And it's because they really have done something wrong. But in their minds, they've rationalized how that can be okay. But in reality, when it comes to a 1.5 GPA is not a 2.0, and you have to have a 2.0 to graduate, and you would have to retake half your classes in order to graduate, there are some facts that create an issue that they cannot overcome. Okay, so what I'm saying about this is, you know, kids, they're going to push you, but when push comes to shove, they really are looking for leadership, for advice, for how to move through things when they're not sure how to do it. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this conversation before, but I remember when I was growing up, my parents, you know, I'd say, oh my gosh, I got this problem. What should I do? And my parents would say, well, let's talk it through. Now, this is when I was in middle school, you know, in high school, where I could make some decisions like that, but they would still help me with those. And we'd talk it through, and they said, well, now, think about where this decision will take you. Think about where this decision will take you. Now, which consequence do you want? Do you want to go this path, or do you want to go this path? Oh, well, I think I like this path. Well, and I'd always get that feedback. Then one day, my senior year in high school, I went up to my mom and I said, okay, Mom, I got this problem. I need to talk it through with you. And I'd say what it was, and she said, it's up to you. It's all in your court today. No! I need some help on this decision. No, it's your decision today. You've had all the training you need. It's time for you to launch. I'm like, oh, this is the scariest place I've ever been. But what I liked about that training is that I think I'm a very good problem solver today. And I think it's because of the way that I was raised to be trained on certain things, and then all of a sudden, okay, Debbie, it's time to fly. It's time for you to be behind the seat of that plane, and you take off on your own solo. Let's see how you do. Those kinds of things are what help us gauge kids today and what we should do with them. All right. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a little ball that has the world on it. Has anybody seen this before? Don't be fooled. The GM made the other villain adorable just to mess with you. She is still going to eat your characters and the planet they live on. So this is just a little cute thing to show you that, you know, in reality, sometimes we put people or kids in place to try to soften what we want, or trying to say, oh yeah, well if it's a kid doing it, it's okay, not the adult. And from an ethics perspective, she's not doing anything wrong. But it's the message to adults that, hey, if a kid can do it, so can adults, and vice versa. And that's not necessarily the case. We really have to think about what we do. This is Finland. Wow. And this is not when I saw Finland. I saw it thawed out. But this is Rovaniemi, up in the northern part of Finland. And really, this is where Santa Claus lives. And Santa Claus is there year-round. It's also where the official North Pole resides. All of your letters to Santa go to the post office up here in Rovaniemi, Finland. And I got to see the post office, the official post office, got to see the official Santa, reindeer run everywhere. And in the wintertime, the whole village is made out of ice. The whole North Pole is out of ice in the winter because it gets down below zero most of the time. And that's where people, you can go stay there in hotels. You stay on ice beds. I didn't stay there, but I think you stay in little blanket things that are real heavy. But anyway, that's Finland. They believe that there are global tensions that are creating some of the things that happen. You can see excellence versus equity, academics versus play, and I versus we. And this is us in the U.S. This is Finland. Okay? Just to give you an idea of what this means, they believe, as you, that in a very young child, up through about second grade, play should be the emphasis of their existence, with content being smattered in there throughout, but not anything heavy, right? Just give them some stuff to pique their interest and use play and creativity as the place of their existence. They believe that everyone should get the same opportunities, not we have some better than others. Everybody should have those same opportunities. They may see it differently, but the same opportunities. And they are much, much more about cooperative than they are about competitive for youngsters. They do believe that there's a place for competitive as kids get older and as we go into adulthood, but our kids should be all about cooperative. And I saw that in motion, and I believe, as they do, that this is a much better model than this. Now, you may or may not. I think you do. This is pretty much your model, right? This is the U.S. model. This is what I want to see change.
What do you mean by equity?
Equity is, instead of labeling somebody as low achieving, high achieving, somebody with a learning disability, somebody that is an honor student, we don't label. Equity means that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we all need help with something. So have disability specialists there to help whoever needs help, and not label that we need this group of kids over here with this kind of instruction versus this group of kids with this kind of instruction. It gets away from honors programs. It gets away from different curriculum strains, and goes back to you got everybody in the same class with help for different areas, whatever those are. So that's what the equity piece means. Yep. All right. This is what I learned in a nutshell, which is a little bit smaller, but teachers are highly respected in Finland. And with that is because they are more highly respected there than lawyers, doctors, anybody. And so the highest quality individuals go into teaching instead of into law or doctors or whatever. That's where they go, is education. So they're there for the lives of the kids. They love teaching just as you do. But they're highly respected, which over here our teachers are not highly respected. Equality, that equity piece is essential over there. Everyone works together for success. So whatever's going on in this classroom and whatever's going on in this classroom, we share ideas. We ask, what are you doing for your difficult student here that I might be able to use over here with my difficult student? What do you do over here that is really good in a play environment that I could use over here in my play environment? It's not about, I've got the answers and I'm the best teacher in the school. It's about how can we all be the best to make sure our kids are successful. That's what this is about. Administrators teach over there. So they teach 2 to 3 classes, and our administrators half a day. So the head administrator may be teaching in the morning and then being principal in the afternoon, and vice versa with an assistant. Physical education, physical activity are a must, which y'all also do with activity. And then you see down here, ethics also is a must. 2 things that I put in that I think are fun. Saunas are in almost every house over there. Every house, not every playground. Saunas. They truly believe in going and getting in a cold lake and then going and getting the sauna and vice versa, because that builds the immune system. And they think that they're less sick because of the hot and cold that they put their bodies through with the saunas. And so they have saunas in, I think it's 93% of their houses.
Wow.
I actually got to see a wood burning, it's only 1 or 2 in Finland, a wood burning sauna at a park. And they use wood to get the heat up. Now get this, 170 degree temperature in that sauna. If you haven't ever been to one and you want to experience it, there's a place in Dallas called King Spa. Anybody ever heard of it? King Spa is over off of 35, I-35 in Dallas, 35 and Royal Lane. And it's in the industrial side. You turn, I don't know my directions. See, that's where I'm disability. I don't know my directions, but anyway, you turn to the left if you're coming from Fort Worth. Turn to the left on Royal, and it's on the left-hand side down a little bit. But there they have a sauna that gets to that 170 degrees. And I can only get in there for like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm sweating like crazy, and you feel like you don't have any breath left. You know, it's really dry. But some people stay in there 10 minutes at a time. And that's what this sauna is like over in Finland. So really, we're talking hot that you get in. And then outside is key, which I know y'all believe in too. Getting them outside, being in the elements out there is very, very important, especially blue skies, green trees, the colors, the elements of what the outside brings is very important. We know in the literature today that being outside and being active outside is a key to lifelong health and being active for a lifetime. We do know that now. So it's important for us to be able to do that on a regular basis. This is the model that I was using, that I'm going to use in the schools. But right now, we're only going to use 2 pieces of it. And one of them is the increasing the amount of recess in the schools. We're going to be working with, and Trinity Valley and Starpoint are doing this year, is we're going to 45-minute content followed by a 15-minute recess 4 times throughout the day. So 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and a recess with lunch. And so Trinity Valley and Starpoint are starting that this year, and the school districts are ready to try this next year. So anybody that's got their kids in public schools, get ready, because it's coming. And the second piece that is very exciting is that we are going to implement in the K-1 programs in Starpoint and Trinity Valley this year, with moving up a grade level with the following years, the ethics social development piece, every grade level from K on in the schools. And this will happen in the public schools starting next year.
You just rock. I'm so, that's really awesome.
You know, we won't be doing it in all schools, and we won't be doing it, to start, because we have to look at it and just make sure it's working and that we're not getting more bullying and all that, that we really are moving in the right direction. But school districts are dialoguing, and with Fort Worth ISD and us, as of August 12th or whatever it was, something like that. I mean, we were so close. But we're launching next year. It's just that there were certain things that we had not come to agreement on, and I had to have a grant in by September 4th, and it just wasn't going to work. So to get those answers in order to get the grant in. So we will be doing it, and they're very willing to do it. I think that tells you where we are in our existence today, as people are ready for that pendulum to start swinging back and having character development, ethics, social development as part of our upbringing again. And if we're not going to get it in the church, which we're not, we're going to have to put it in as a content area. Comment? Or you're just
Do
thinking?
you think that's a result, teachers and administrators and state officials wanting that pendulum to swing back because we're seeing what's happening as our kiddos are growing up?
Absolutely.
They're actually doing-
Absolutely, yeah. Classes are out of control.
It's crazy.
There's, learning is not taking place. Yeah.
Having taught in the public schools in the early 70s and then in this century, there's all the difference in the world in the field, how we shared with one another. And now it's more dog eat dog. And that, to me, has been put on us by government,
Yes.
for one.
I agree. I totally agree. And, I never thought I would be political. I really did not want to be political. I didn't want to have to go talk to politicians. I didn't want to have to go talk to the Commissioner of Education. I didn't want to have to go talk to Arnie Duncan in Washington, D.C. But somebody's got to do it. And right now, it's me. And so, I invite anybody that wants to get on that bandwagon. You can follow, you saw my website, you can follow what I'm doing and where I'm going with that website. And I don't want to be political, but I've learned, as you've said, it is political today. And unless we change the laws that are on the books for everything that schools have to do, this will literally only be an intervention in a school, and it won't become a school district mandate until we can get politicians to change the way they're seeing what's on the books. And so I had an epiphany, I think it was Monday or Tuesday of this week, that my next step is that I've got to get on board with people at the state level, including Michael Williams, who's the commissioner, whoever becomes, the Department of Education group, whoever's is part of that. And what has to happen is we're going to have to clear what the laws are right now and start over. Because right now, all we're doing is just putting one more layer on of things that have to be done with all these other things that have to be done. And there's not enough time in the day for that. And so in order to feed in an hour of ethics per week and an hour of play per day on top of what they're doing, something's got to give. And that means that the laws have to be adjusted in order for us not to require that everybody has to have this much content in this, and this much content in this, and this much content over here. Because with K2, they don't need that much content. They just don't. And that's the message that I'm going out there so that we can implement the ethics and implement the recess. The two pieces that we're not doing yet, but will come in time, the restructuring of the school day, K2 kids only going 4.5 hours of actual school, with play, creativity, problem-solving skills for after-school time. And then the other piece is the assessment will become developmental, no grades until after 5th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And I think part of that too, like, it would restore so much of the joy that teachers have. Like,
Absolutely.
A teacher is just so creative, and she literally has this to this, 15 minutes, you will say this to this.
Yep.
And it kills her because she sees her class struggling, and so she's got this curriculum that she's passed to a unit test that's coming given by the school district. but yet she sees her kids struggling, or this area says spend 15 minutes and she needs an hour.
Yep.
And this content they've already learned, and she cries all
I
the
know.
time. It's her 4th year teaching, because she says, I can't give them what I need. I didn't become a teacher just to read from a manual.
Exactly.
She's so creative, but she's so squelched, and so she does what she can.
Exactly.
But it's so hard.
I know, it really is difficult, and I think if nothing else, what we're trying to do is free up local control and it comes back to respect for teachers. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and give my example. Alex, the guy that has been with me for 2 years, going on 3 years now with his thesis, and now is gonna be helping with Project ISIS. Heather may have been in there that day too. When I talked about a sponge, here's my newest thought on a sponge. Y'all know what a sponge looks like when it's in the package when you first buy it? It hadn't been opened yet. Is it softer? It's not dry, is it?
No.
It's softer. It has some fluidity to it, right? And you open it up, and at that point it's still soft, and you can maneuver with it. And then you put it on the countertop, or you put it in a cup somewhere, or you put it somewhere. And if you don't use it, what happens to it? It dries out. And then what do you have to do to get it to work again? You have to get it underwater again, or something that makes it pliable again. Okay, I want you to think about our kids today and their brains being sponges. Because don't we say that kids' brains are sponges? And we say that kids should be able to take in that information because they can take in so much more information when they're young because they're sponges, right? Okay, think about this with me. Our kids today, 60% of our kids are overweight or obese. 60% in Texas are overweight or obese. If our kids are overweight or obese, does that mean they're moving more or less?
Less.
And what kinds of foods are they taking in? Fat foods or vegetable foods? So, what do you think that does to the sponge? So their sponge is already dry when they come to school. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They're overweight, they're not moving, they come to school, and their sponges are already dry. They're not in a package like they used to be when they come to school. They're dry. They come to school, and we sit them, not y'all, but schools sit them in a desk for hours on end because they're sponges. They can take in this information, and at the end of the day, with no recess, because they punished them, you don't get to go out to recess today because you couldn't sit still in class. So you're going to stay in here and learn more during recess while everybody else goes outside. So now the kid that's the most unmanageable is going to be more unmanageable for you because you didn't give them what they needed in the first place, which was movement. Okay.
Yes.
Dry sponge, right? Are we lubricating the sponge or creating a fire with that sponge by sitting them in their desk? We're creating a fire. The sponge is no longer able to take information in because it has nothing to glom onto. Nothing. You can't consider the knowledge as water. It's not. It's just stuff that's supposed to attach to the water sponge, and it's not happening. And no matter how much we sit, no matter how much we try to feed into them, it's not going to happen. So when it comes to this, and when I talk to people about where we're going and what we're doing, it's all about the message of my analogy of the sponge and what we need to do. Okay, before I get into, I'm going to give you a couple of differences here. Before I do that, though, I want to take a little word break again, and let's see where you are. If you're carefully planning things all the time, you're over here. Carefully planning. And if you're acting spontaneously, you're over here. Which one are you? Carefully planning, acting spontaneously. Planning, spontaneous. All right. Who are my planners? Who are my planners? Look around. Here are the planners. All right. Who are my spontaneity people? Woo! All right.
All the lead teachers.
Every one of you?
Yes.
No, are you
To
kidding
be
me?
spontaneous,
the
though,
spontaneous
you have to
again.
be organized.
Yes,
You have to have something to work with.
yes, that's true.
Red on your face, oh my goodness.
Well, I love it.
But,
Shut up.
We're learning a lot today.
Learning and going.
She wants it done last year.
Here's the word that I would use. Here's the word that I would use that kind of goes across this spontaneity versus the planning is change. Who's afraid? You know, who goes after change, or who is okay with change, versus who wants to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to fit and go the way it needs to.